You're listening to the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, episode 111. This month, I am helping you prepare for your next interview. In fact, this entire month is dedicated to your interview preparation. If you didn't catch last week's episode with Tracy Hooper about how to change your language to speak more confidently, don't forget to listen to that episode. Words matter. And when you're interviewing and sharing your story about why you're the best candidate for the job, it's important you promote who you are and what you do as best as you can. Today's topic is important because our nerves, they can sometimes get the best of us and they can cause us to make a mistake. We don't want to. So today we're going to talk about interview mistakes and how not to make them. I'm going to share some stories and situations with you from my years of being a hiring manager, some of my own interview experiences, as well as helping my clients navigate their next interview so they can show up and find the job they love. Yeah, we're going to be serious today, but we're going to have a few laughs as well. This is the Mid-Career GPS Podcast, and I'm your host, John Nerrell. I help mid-career professionals who are feeling stuck, undervalued, and underutilized show up to find a job they love or love the job they have using my proven four-step formula. It's time to start building your mid-career GPS, so let's get started. Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the podcast. I want to tell you that I have created a brand new guide to help you prepare for your next interview. It's called 26 Sentence Starters to help you answer any interview question. Now, these sentence starters will help you formulate your answer and hit all of the key points you want to make at various stages throughout the interview process across a variety of various themes that happen when we are interviewing. I want you to go and visit johnnerrell.com to get your guide today. You will see a button right there on the homepage for you to go ahead and order it and get it immediately downloaded into your inbox. Let's have a little fun with today's topic because, like I said, if you can't laugh at yourself, it's going to be a little bit difficult to learn. We have all made some interview mistakes. I certainly have. And today's episode is going to help us talk about them and how not to make them. But I'm going to begin today by talking about something that I have heard a lot about on the news and on social media. And I actually think it is a huge pitfall for you to bring up in an interview, whether you are looking for an internal promotion or you are planning to leverage your talents and expertise and take it to a new organization. Don't use inflation as a reason for wanting more money or for wanting that new job. It is hard for all of us right now. There is no question that when we go to the supermarket or we go to the gas station, that we are absolutely spending more and it is hitting all of our wallets and pocketbooks and bank accounts and things like that. But companies are feeling it too. And whether they are still turning a profit or not, I don't believe it is in your best position to use that as a reason why you want a raise, why you want a new job, and why you want more money. Because in all honesty, the company's going to turn around and say to you, yeah, we're feeling it too. Your best move is to bring evidence into the conversation, how you have demonstrated competencies for the position you are applying to, where you have proven results, where you have added value to a project, to a team, brought in additional revenue into the company, whatever those things are. If you are going to interview and part of that benefit, if you will, of getting that new job is an increase in your compensation, leverage your results. What I want to offer here is inflation right now is a circumstance we are all dealing with, individuals, families, companies, etc. The other circumstance that you are dealing with is trying to find that new job and get that increase in compensation. Use your evidence to talk about why you're the best person for the job. Don't talk about circumstances that may not be received in the same way or with the same understanding or empathy, because companies may not do that. I know that might be hard to hear, but I would far rather see someone come from a place of value and service when they are talking about why they want that new job, why they're the best fit for it, as opposed to just saying, well, I'm interviewing because I want more money. That has never flown well in the past. It is certainly not going to fly well here. Here's some other interview mistakes to avoid. Not preparing. I can remember I had a person interview for a job when I was hiring, and they literally said this to me, quote, because I remember it really well. Could you please tell me what job I'm applying for? I've been interviewing for a lot lately, and I just forget what this job's about. All right. If you're leading off with that in an interview, I'm probably not going to think you're really good at managing time and managing your workload. Do your homework. Do the prep. What I would offer here is take your job posting, archive it somewhere, copy and paste it into a Word or a Google Doc. I have a job search tracker that is also available on my website that you can go ahead and download. Those are things that will help keep you organized. Not being prepared is not an excuse for you going into an interview. Do your work. This interview mistake may seem a little bit out of left field, but trust me, it has happened. What do you do if you miss your appointment? Just own it. Just own it. Don't worry about trying to fabricate a lie or some story if you had the date wrong in your calendar or in your phone, or you had it wrong in your mind and you just honestly and genuinely missed it. If that happens, I would just own it and say, I realized today that I had an appointment for an interview and I missed it. And I missed it because I had it wrong in my book or in my phone. It is not something I do. I appreciate you understanding my mistake. Is there an opportunity for us to reschedule the interview? They may say yes, they may say no, but it saves you a lot of mental stress and energy about trying to come up with a story to cover yourself. Now, the flip side of this is, what happens if you have a family emergency? Obviously, that needs to be the priority. And certainly in the moment, you may not, and really honestly shouldn't be thinking about, oh gosh, I have to go and cancel the interview. At that point, I would follow up when you can and simply say, we had a family emergency. I want to thank you for understanding my situation. When can we reschedule our conversation? And I would just leave it at that. You are not in control of whether they believe you or not. But again, it's about showing up and owning where you are. And look, sometimes those things happen. Hopefully everybody's okay in those situations. And sometimes we just honestly make mistakes. We don't intend to, but that can happen. You may be interacting with more recruiters than you have ever done in your career. As there are more positions open and companies are looking to fill them, there is a greater demand currently placed on recruiters right now to partner with companies and getting qualified talent to fill those positions. You are not allowed to ghost a recruiter or an employer. You never know who they know and who they're connected to. You always show up at your best. And I will say here to any hiring managers or recruiters that happen to be listening to this, I know you're busy. You are not allowed to ghost potential employees either. This is a partnership. Get you're busy, but you got to do your job. And I hear from so many people every single week this frustration that they have about being ghosted by recruiters or employers. They've interviewed for a job. They were told they were going to hear something. And then a month goes by and they have never heard, even after they have sent subsequent emails. You can only control your own actions and what it is that you do. There does come a point where, hey, they're not responding to emails or they're not answering your phone calls. You probably just have to let that go at some point, and you get to decide when that is. But you as a candidate, do not ghost a recruiter or employer. At some point, a good hiring manager will probably ask you this question: why should we hire you? It is one of the most important and powerful conversations you will have to answer during an interview. And yes, it's stressful. Everybody I work with they're heart-centered leaders and professionals. It is difficult for them to talk about themselves. And I coach them hard on how to shift their energy from this place of value and service so they can answer this question very authentically, genuinely, competently, and confidently in order to do that. As you're thinking about the interview after you've left it, more than likely, this is one of those questions that sticks out and goes, oh, I just wish I had said this, or I wish I answered that. You've got to know the reasons why they want to hire you. I've shared this story before, but I'm going to share it again because we've got a lot of new people who are listening to the podcast. The last job that I held before I opened my coaching practice full time, I was encouraged to interview at this organization by a previous boss. She had interviewed at the company. She turned down an offer. She said, John, there's other positions open there for you. I think you're a great fit. You should go interview. I didn't want to. I didn't feel like I was qualified. I looked at the job posting. I think I met about 50% of the requirements in the job posting. And finally, she said to me, John, just get out of your own way and go interview for the job. So I did. Fast forward, I go for a 4-hour interview. It started off with a test, which I didn't think I did really well on. I met with the executive vice president. I didn't think that went well either. And I had another interview after that I was like, okay. And I was going to interview with a director who would eventually end up being my boss. And there was a moment when I was sitting there waiting and I thought, I should just leave. Like, I've bombed this interview. I should just leave. I should just go. Done. And I thought, well, I could. But then I thought, well, what do I get to learn from these next 2 hours? How do I want to show up for this next set of interviews? And I decided to stay, but I also agreed to myself that I was not going to hold back on any answers. So we go in, there's some instant rapport. We're having a good conversation. And she was sitting behind her desk and I was sitting in a chair in front of her desk. And she looks at me and she goes, tell me, why should we hire you? And as best as I can remember it, it's pretty good. Here's what I said. Well, I spent 14 years at a district in northern New Jersey. And then I moved to Washington, D.C., and I spent 14 months at the District of Columbia Public Schools and 14 months at the state superintendent's office. I'm just trying to get to 15 somewhere. Will you give me a job? And there was this pause and this awkward laugh from my director. And I took that as an opportunity to go in. And I said, all joking aside, here's why you hire me. My content knowledge is really good. And while I feel like I bombed that test this morning, I know there are things that you can do to skill me up and level me up, and it's not going to take that long to train me. So check. I know that I'm really, really good with people. I have built teams. I have repaired dysfunctional teams. And if there is a place for me within this organization to help you or anyone with that, I am your guy. And additionally, if you ever need to put me in front of a client, I will always represent the company as professionally as possible while at the same time ensuring that the client is number one in our eyes. And if there is a need for you to hire me, that's why you do it. I thought, where did that answer come from, John? And I left that interview and I went to the other interviews, and sure enough, I got offered the job. I was on the job for 3 months. I write about this in my book, Show Up: 6 Strategies to Lead a More Energetic and Impactful Career. Shameless plug. And, and she comes into my office and she closes my door. 3 months on the job, I thought, oh my gosh, I'm getting fired. And she looks at me and she goes, you're not getting fired. So, okay, good. Thank you for that. She told me why they hired me. They hired me for the same reasons I told her why they should hire me. As a leader within the organization, she was overwhelmed and pulled in so many different directions that she really couldn't attend as much as she wanted to a 26-person team she was leading. She asked me to take over those duties for her and work alongside of her in terms of leading the team. I knew my value. I had listened enough to know where I was needed, and I went for it with nothing to lose. That is my wish for you. You can make mistakes in interviews and you can find a way to recover and pull it all back in. So you must know how to answer that why should we hire you question. As a hiring manager, one of the things that I always appreciated was an opportunity to have a conversation with potential employees and candidates. I wanted to get to know them, but I wanted to have a dialogue with them. One of the things that you need to keep in mind, and it is one of the biggest mistakes people make in interviews, is that they talk too long. I know that sounds a little crazy because you are the one being interviewed. But I'm going to offer you here, keep your answers to 90 seconds, no more than 120 seconds for each response. Allow time for engagement and conversation so there can be follow-up. In last week's episode, when I talked to Tracy Hooper, she has a great skill called 3 sentences in a period. You say 3 sentences and then you pause. Put a period in there to just pause to allow for any kind of reaction or dialogue. So keep that in mind. Let the interview be a conversation between you and the hiring manager or the interviewer you're speaking with. Avoid being needy or graspy. Nobody likes that stuff. Yes, you're there because you want the job. Think about when you're dating somebody, if you're married or partnered, or you've been in a long-term relationship with someone, you probably got there because you weren't being needy and clingy. Nobody likes that. You let the relationship unfold, evolve. You let it all come together. Do the same thing with your interviews. I tell my clients all the time, think of it as just sitting down and having a cup of coffee with somebody. Have the conversation. If you talk too much, you're not having the conversation. Okay. Another interview mistake. We're still doing virtual interviews. If you have not mastered the virtual interview, it is a fatal flaw for you in the employer's eyes. You must look good on the virtual platform. I am not suggesting that you have a studio-ready background behind you. It needs to be professional. It needs to look good. It needs to be free of a lot of distractions, but it also needs to be personal. What does it say about you? If you see me in any of my videos, if you're in my private Facebook group, Your Mid-Career GPS, and I go in there and live, you see I've got a background behind me that is very personal. You see a bowling pin, you see a couple of Golden Girls characters, you see some books. That is who I am. That is who I am. I can be serious all day long, but I like to have a little bit of fun too. Make sure your eyes are in the top third of the screen. Make sure your lighting is good. Make sure that you are framed accordingly, that we see a head, your neck, a little bit of shoulders. If you are on an interview and your laptop is sitting on a table and the monitor is turned with the camera on it and it is looking up at you at a diagonal, clean your nose hairs. Nobody needs to see that. It is one of those things that is such a pet peeve for me. But when I am talking to colleagues of mine who are interviewing and I've asked them, what are some of your pet peeves? And they're like, you would think more than 2 years into this pandemic, people would know how to behave on Zoom. We are far more understanding about the dog barking and the kid crying and all those kind of things. And what a great tip from Tracy in last week's episode where she just said, thank you for understanding. We get those things in a virtual environment, but if you're not good at mastering the virtual interview, you are putting yourself at a deficit. Here's another pet peeve. When it comes time for you to have questions for the interviewer or the hiring manager, have a really good follow-up questions. Don't ask things like, what's a typical day like? When I got that as a hiring manager, I was like, no day's ever the same. Ask me a better question. Your questions should be out of curiosity. What is it that you've heard in the interview or that's come up in your research that you want to know more about? So have better questions. We will talk more about that next week, but make sure you have better questions. Here was one that came up recently when I was doing a virtual presentation that I added to this list because honestly, it kind of surprised me that somebody would answer a particular question in this way. So here's how I'm going to frame it. Do not be combative or argumentative with the interviewer. Yeah, let that sit in for a minute, right? I'm going to say it again. Do not be combative or argumentative with the interviewer. More than likely, your reaction is, I would never, I can't imagine anybody would do that. So let me give you the context. I was doing a virtual presentation. We opened it up for Q&A. And a participant asked me about the tell me about yourself question, which was part of what I was talking about in this virtual presentation. And they said, I've been interviewing a lot. And whenever I get that question about tell me about yourself, I turn it back to the interviewer and I say, I've been asked that question before. What do you really want to know about me? John, what do you think of that answer? Okay, I'm going to just pause here for a minute. I want you to think about how you would answer that question if somebody asked it to you. Okay, got a thought? All right, here's what I said. First thing I did, I asked this person a question. I said, how many job offers have you gotten? And they said none. And I said, in all my years of hiring and interviewing, if a candidate responded in that way to me, what I would say to them is, you will have an opportunity to ask me questions at the end. Please ask the interview questions that we're asking of everyone. And that person would have made a fatal flaw in my opinion. They would have to have a phenomenal interview after that because the energy that came back was being combative. Remember, interviews are about building relationships. They do not have to be perfect relationships. But in the scope of 30 minutes, 45 or 60 minutes, over the course of a 2-hour, half-day, full-day interview, throughout all the interviews and conversations you have had with everyone in that company, some which right now are going to 4th and 5th round interviews, your job is to build a relationship with everyone you are speaking with. When you come across as being combative, argumentative, dismissive, uncertain, evasive, you are putting that relationship in jeopardy. You are making, in my opinion, the biggest mistake you can make, which is failing to build a relationship with the people you're speaking with. Hopefully today I have given you a lot of things to think about. And certainly there are more mistakes and horror stories and things that are out there. But when you go to an interview, and if you have been on an interview and have perhaps made one of these mistakes, I'm going to offer you this. Forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. Acknowledge you've made the mistake. Work diligently at never making that mistake again. And the next time you go in for an interview, be better at it. As I was preparing for this episode, I thought, wow, when I shared that story with you earlier about my response to the how do I hire you question, that was the last interview I went on in my career for a corporate type job. That was 10 years ago. And I thought, how I answered that question in my mid 40s versus how I interviewed when I was 22. Look at the growth. Look at how my experiences have just shaped how I've interviewed, how I've shown up differently. You want that after every interview you go on. I work with people who have been on dozens of interviews and they have not gotten a job offer yet. They have gotten to final rounds. They have not gotten a job offer yet. And they are just getting better and stronger and more competent and confident in how they are telling their story to somebody. They know that job is coming because they are worth it and they are valuable and they have a lot to give to a different or new organization. So if you've made a mistake, let it go, but learn from it. Okay, I have an exciting piece of news. So I want to thank you for staying with me. Got an exciting piece of news. Starting next week, I am dropping a week-long series of mini episodes focused solely on interview preparation and tips. We start on Monday, August 15th, and we go right through Friday, August 19th. These episodes are going to be about 10 minutes long, short, actionable steps to help you with your next interview. And I don't want you to miss it. So here's how you don't miss it. Follow or subscribe on your favorite platform. Make sure that you get these episodes immediately downloaded into your podcast player. And I want you to join me starting on Monday. Tell your friends, tell your coworkers, anybody you know who's looking for a job. Next week is going to be amazing. I can't wait to share it with you. But until then, my friends, remember this. We build our mid-career GPSs 1 mile or 1 step at a time, and how we show up matters. I wish you a great rest of the day, and I'll see you next week. If you enjoyed today's show and don't want to miss an episode, follow on Apple Podcasts or wherever you usually listen. And I'd appreciate it if you would leave a rating and review. Visit johnneral.com to download your free copy of the 55-minute career transition jumpstart to help you start building your mid-career GPS. And don't forget to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow me on social at John Neral Coaching. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next time.